Yeah, so I'm Paul Baay. I'm the CEO of Touchstone Exploration, and today I want to walk you through something a little different than the last two gold stories you've heard about. What I'm going to talk about today is an opportunity in Trinidad. We're a Canadian company based in Canada with all of our assets in Trinidad, and we're listed in Toronto and on the AIM exchange. And it's been a pretty exciting year this last year for us. So, you know, I'll walk you through where we're at. This picture that you see on the front illustration here is actually our well at Cascader, which we drilled last year and tested earlier in this year. And just to give you a magnitude of the type of projects that we're looking at here, this is a well that cost us about $5.2 million. And according to our independent engineers, it's got somewhere between 200 and 500 BCF of gas in the structure, and it's probably worth something in the range of about $300 to $500 million. So gives you an idea of the type of projects that we're looking at. Just trying to move forward here. What's our competitive advantage that we see? Well, I think it's a proven, experienced leadership team, both at the board level and at management. This is the third public oil and gas company that I've been involved with. All of them in the past, we built them up from anywhere from 3 to 500 barrels of oil equivalent today to north of 20,000 when they were either sold or restructured and packaged up into a different entity. And this is my first international project that we've been working on, but it's the same basic principle: get a good big land position in an existing operation where there's a hydrocarbon basin, and then exploit it, provide some good technology, good engineering to it, good geology to it, and move forward. And I think we've proven we've been able to do that. Currently, we're positive operating cash flow, which is a bit of a surprise when you look at where the current commodity price is for oil. But basically, we'll walk through that a little bit later. At current prices, we're generating a small amount of cash, with the real story being when we bring on these big natural gas wells. First one the end of this year, and then the remainder of them next year. And then I'll talk about the exploration opportunities. So the 5 pillars that we've got in the company are the exploration upside, which is now almost becoming a development story. We've drilled the first 2 exploratory wells, and I'll talk about them. There'll be 2 more between now and the end of the year, and a program that really we see now is going to be laid out for the next 5 years. Scalable economic growth. We also have an underlying oil set of portfolio of locations and opportunities for us to drill in that particular enterprise. It's really low risk. It's maybe not as exciting as some of the exploration, but it really is good fundamental cash flow for us. The value creation model, what we want to do is we want to just keep a low amount of debt, great prospect inventory, and positive cash flow. And as we go forward, we want to just continue to grow the company. On the environmental stewardship side, it's pretty important for us, and I think it's for our shareholders, investors. On the environmental stewardship side, we've done some things that are pretty exciting in the region. And basically what we've been doing is taking best-in-class world standards and trying to apply them to some of these older fields in Trinidad. And I think we're seeing not only the benefits economically, but there's also some real social benefits. And then on the community leadership side, our policy there is pretty simple. What we want to do is we want to get involved at the local level and have our people get involved at the local level as well. So let me talk about the land holdings to start with. We've got really 2 different things. We've got developed acreage and exploration acreage. The yellow that you see there is the exploration acreage, and that's basically the exploration block that we're going to talk about. It's called Oratois. And then the development acreage, which are those orange colored properties, and those are the ones that we've had for about 10 years now, and we'll be drilling a bunch of development oil wells on those as we go forward. Very different types of projects, but each one of them has their own benefits. So let's start with the exploration, because that's really where I think the talk has been, and what's really moved the share price during the last year has been the success. So, I think what we talked about with Oratois is that we were looking for some significant gas opportunities, natural gas opportunities that I had always sort of called them world-class gas opportunities. And that's clearly, I think, what we've been able to show in the first 2 wells of the 4 wells that we drilled in this program. And I'll just walk you through that now. So what we really have is 5 different opportunities. on four different areas. The first one was the Coho well. This was the smallest of all of the structures that we had identified. Tested about 11 million a day, and I'll show you where that is on a map. You know, we were looking for something that would be in the order of 6 to 8 million cubic feet a day, so obviously exceeded expectations. Cascader was another structure that we drilled, and we drilled it late in the year and went to test it. We originally thought this was possibly going to be an oil structure, but you can see there that it actually tested about 28 million cubic feet a day and about 783 barrels a day. Give you an idea of where that sits. Like our current production is about 1,400, so that well alone will, you know, quadruples the amount of base production that we have. We're currently drilling Chinook. I'll talk about that. Then we're going to go back and move back to Cascader again, and we want to go deeper than we were the first time, actually get back to the original prospect. And then we're going to move in Q1, probably Q2 of next year, depending on how the weather is, to what we call Royston, which is a gas prospect on the east side. And it's by far the biggest, and it from day one has been, I will say, the most exciting prospect that we have. So it's kind of a portfolio of prospects we have on Oratois. Let me just go into a little bit of detail on those. Start with the map. You can see Coho there. You can see Cascader, Chinook, and Royston. You can see the four prospects. And basically, there's 2 wells going to get drilled at Cascader as we go forward. As far as the background goes, the reason that we started to look at this block was basically this large block that you see that's called Central Block. That's been producing for almost 20 years now. By the time it's done, it will have produced about a half a TCF of gas, about 25 million barrels of liquids. And the challenge that we put out to the team here was see if you can find more of those. It doesn't make sense that there's only one of these turbidite type structures sitting out here. We looked at all the old logs, probably about 70 old wells that have been drilled out here, put a different set of glasses on and different interpretation. And basically what came up were these 4 prospects that we have. So the first one that we drilled was Coho. And as I mentioned, it was the smallest of all of them. It far exceeded our expectation in that it produced about 11.6 million cubic feet a day as average. We'll bring it on between 8 and 10 million cubic feet a day to a facility, hopefully that's very, very close by, about 3 kilometers. And as I say, that should be on before the end of the year. Reserves on there, about 1.1 to 3.3 million BOEs, significant discovery. But the real key of Coho was we wanted to do 2 things. We wanted to prove that we could drill a well to this depth on budget. So we did that. And second of all, we wanted to prove the geological model that there was hydrocarbon in this turbidite in the Herrera. Should just mention that natural gas in Trinidad, you know, it's from a government take point of view, it's 12.5% royalty on this, and then we ship it to the industrials. And there's a big industrial complex on the island called Phoenix Park where they process a lot of natural gas into various chemicals that get shipped all over the world, and that will be our market that we sell to, and I can talk about that a little bit more. We then went over to Cascader, the second well, and this, you know, far exceeded our expectations. To be quite frank, we were looking at something that would maybe be around 400 BOEs a day, and we did have 3D seismic that said we could move up structure from this old well that was drilled back in the late 1950s. And our view was if you moved up structure, we'd get into some of the main sand sequence. And quite frankly, we did that. And the well tested in 2 different zones, in the upper zone and the lower, and they're not very far apart. They actually sit almost right on top of each other. And what you can see is they both tested north of 5,000 BOEs a day. This is really a world-class liquids-rich gas play. It's 87% natural gas, the rest are liquids. So we'll get a combination of oil revenue out of this and the natural gas pricing that we have. We then had an independent report done on this, and that independent report, as I mentioned at the get-go there, showed up to about a half a TCF of gas in this structure. And you know, when you really think about it, if you look at that other structure at the very beginning that was our lead into this play, it's going to be about the same size. So it doesn't look a lot different than I think what we were hoping for. But in reality, this came much sooner in the exploration program than what we thought. So the next well that we're drilling right now is Chinook. This is a little bit of a seismic, and you can see Cascader sitting to the north of it there. There's the Cascader well, and then there's Chinook. And Chinook, we're about just over 6,000 feet. We should be running intermediate casing at, call it 7,800 feet in the next little while. then after that we'll be ready to enter the horizon. So that's on schedule. We told everybody probably the third week to the end of September we'll have results on Chinook, and that's looking like that's still right on target. Then what we're going to do is slide back over to Cascader, which is about a mile to the north, and off of the same location as the original well, we're going to drill this real creative name we call Cascader Deep. And what that is we're just going to go another 2,000 to 3,000 feet below the existing well we have, and we're trying to catch that second structure that's down below. Well, at the same time, we'll also prove the total thickness of the original Cascader well that we drilled. We didn't actually get all the way through the formation. It started to kick at us pretty hard from a gas point of view, and there were some safety issues, so we decided just to case the well, and we'll go forward. Put in place a couple of new things when we go back and drill it. We're going to use a different mud system, going to have some different mechanics on the rig, so we think that we'll be able to get to that deeper zone. And so far with what we've been able to see at Chinook, that looks like a very real possibility. Then we'll move over to Royston, which, as I mentioned, was probably one of the the most exciting things that we started with, and it's more to the east. It's truly exploration. So is Chinook, though, and this is a big structure that's both identified on seismic, as well as this old well that was drilled in 1965. We're basically going back in and twinning that, and we think that there's a bunch of bypass pay in that old well from 1965. 1965, the geological model that we're using really wasn't well known, so we think that's one advantage. The other thing was in 1965, there wasn't a lot of gas infrastructure on the island, and the people drilling these wells would have been looking for oil. So when they saw these logs, they were probably disappointed. But now with the gas infrastructure and everything else, this is obviously something for us to go after. After we're done Royston, we've now identified about 21 additional drilling prospects on the block. Some of those are going to be below and above where we have existing wells, but I think what it's done is it's really now set up a 5-year drilling inventory for us on the block as we go ahead and bring it on. So the 2020 corporate goals, we're going to negotiate and formalize the natural gas contract that I mentioned. That gets sold to the National Gas Company of Trinidad. They're sort of the aggregator of all the gas, and we've had very, very good discussions with them. We continue to move forward, and hopefully in the next month we'll be able to get that signed up. It's a big contract. It's probably going to be the biggest contract we sign in Trinidad. It's going to be all the gas from Ottawa is going to go to that contract. So, on the value side, it's probably going to be worth $1 billion in itself. And so we're taking our time and making sure that we do it right. And obviously they want to get it right on their end as well. On the drilling side, we'll drill Chinook and Cascader Deep prior to the end of the year. And excited about those. I really want to emphasize that although we were 2 for 2 initially, each one of these is independent exploratory wells. So as we go along here, number one, we'll be adding reserves if we're successful, but there is a certain amount of risk to every one of these that we drill. We also want to bring Coho 1 on production between now and the end of the year. It'll provide a really good source of cash flow to us. And we already have the pipe there, is coated. We've got separator en route, and we're using all local content. Just on that comment about local content, give you an example on the Chinook well, for instance, we've got 52 locals, actual locals from within the small area that we're working in, that Pool Valley area. And then we've got about 250 local contractors helping us on that project. So it's, there is a lot of local input and a lot of local knowledge and expertise on all of these that we do. And then the last thing we want to do is formulate a design to bring on that big monster well at Cascader. My only caution on that as well is we really want to see what happens at Chinook and Cascader Deep, because if either of them work or both of them were to work, that will all be tied in together and brought in together through the same system as Cascader. So lots of good things on that front. I don't want to forget about that. Our oil projects on the west side of the island. They've kind of got us here, and they're the ones that are paying the bills right now, certainly for us. We've got year to date, we've produced about 1,500 barrels a day. That number looks pretty small when you start to look at these new wells that'll be adding 4,000 or 5,000 BOEs a day per well. So it gives you a pretty good idea how you can see us quickly getting to 10, 15, 20,000 BOEs a day over the next period of time. We've got 10 producing fields, and I think the key is we got 208 drilling locations. So if you look at that, that's roughly 10 wells a year. We've got about a 20-year drilling inventory on the oil side. So in a perfect world, what you'd have is us doing this development drilling on the on the west side of the island. You'd have us doing some exploration drilling on the east side of the island, as well as some development drilling to follow up some of the gas discoveries on the east side of the island. Value creation, that's the management team. That's myself, Scott, and James. You know, and our real focus is to keep the balance sheet as clean as we can while we move forward. Obviously, minimum dilution as we go. But I'll be quite frank, without us having listed in London and been able to tap that market over the last couple of years, we wouldn't have been able to have the exploration success that we've had. Quick snapshot of the financials the first half of the year. As I mentioned, we did just over 10.5 million of sales. These are all in USDs. Even with the terrible Q2 prices, we still had funds flow from operations of almost $1 million. At the end of the quarter, we had about 6.8 million of cash. That's actually gone up since then, simply because we were able to recover some VAT money from the Trinidad government. We put in place a credit facility for $20 million US, of which we've drawn 15 million. And market capitalization today is about $234 million in Canadian dollars on the Toronto Exchange. So things have definitely moved forward quickly for us in the last year. Environmental stewardship, as I mentioned, you know, we do a lot of things. We do little things like beach cleanup, and then we've done some bigger things. And, you know, one of the things I think that's been most important has been on the water disposal side. In Trinidad, you're allowed to release your surface water after you've separated the oil and water and then release it back to the jungle. We decided we wanted to take on the approach of where we would take all the produced water and put it back into the produced reservoir. So we now have that, and hopefully by the end of 2020, we'll have virtually all of our fields with zero effluent discharge, and it's just the right thing. The next thing we want to do is, right now natural gas is released either vented or flared on the island from our oil tanks. We're going to start to measure that, gather it, and then use it either for running various things that we do or possibly creating steam to put back in the reservoir for flooding down the road. So some little things that we can do that are very helpful from an environmental point of view. You know, this is probably one of the things that I'm most proud about that we've done in Trinidad, and we've had some great successes, but we found this special needs school at Rio Claro that really needed some help. Rio Claro's right in the middle of our Oratoa block, and the team decided that we wanted to refurbish it and bring it up to a standard where it could be used for some life skills for a number of people that really needed it. And it's really come together, and it's been a lot of fun. But I have a whole new appreciation for what working outside in Trinidad weather, the challenges that it presents. It's hot. That's hot and humid, and it's gives you a whole new appreciation for people that are doing that every day. So the investment summary: significant exploration upside at Oratoa. You know, world-class opportunities. You know, we got a bunch of 200 some odd drilling locations on the oil side. We certainly have a, you know, positive cash flow where we are now, so all the capital we have can go into the ground. And I'd like to think we've got a proven track record in what we've done both at the board level and what I've done in the past. And then we're being, you know, I think we're being very responsible, and it's exciting to be able to make some significant changes in Trinidad on both the environmental and the social side. Before I just wrap up, I just want to mention about COVID as well. It's a question that I have. You know, we put in place a number of different things in Trinidad to deal with COVID. And there's been a bit of an outbreak in Trinidad in the last couple of weeks. And as a matter of fact, we actually had 2 cases test positive on the rig. But the way we had separated the crews, we were able to continue. We're able to continue on isolating, obviously, the people that have been tested positive, and then we can roll in. So it's the new reality. It's something I think we're all going to have to get used to. But it is something that along the way here, it does make things slow down a little bit as we have to have a lot of redundancies in the service. But anyway, on that note, I'll turn it back over to you, Roland, if you have any questions.
But I'll come through a few here. So a question for Paul: have you encountered oil on core while drilling at Chinook like they did back in 1959?
You know, I've got to tell you that I'm not going to make any comments on the well until we're done the end of the month.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, how do the communities in close proximity to the drill sites feel about the drills, and are locals involved?
Yeah, and I think I touched on that a little bit. Yeah, I think that the local communities see it as an opportunity. You know, this is an area that obviously it's got some relatively high unemployment. So we're trying to work with those communities as best as we can to get as much, you know, local content as we can. And when I say local content, there's kind of 2 levels to it. there's the local content in Trinidad, and we virtually use 100% local content if you define that by Trinidad, local drilling company, local mud, local cementing, like all of those things. But then there's the smaller community, the local community right around the rig. And so we've been attempting to reach out to them. And I think there's been a little bit of frustration sometimes that we can't do things quicker, but part of the problem too is that a lot of the jobs that we need are quite technical. And so we're trying to put in place two things where we can hire the locals, but also put in place some training programs so that longer term we can employ more people in the community. This isn't something where we're going to blow in and drill a couple of wells and disappear. This is going to be a relationship over the next 20 years. So we need to develop it, and we need to make sure that we've got the right training and quite frankly, the right safety mechanisms in place. So that's been our approach to it, and we're really going to try to honor that on our side and as we move forward. I think it's a great opportunity for the country and the area, and as we've shown in the other areas that we've been in Faizabad specifically, that we can have a positive impact on the community, and that's what we intend to do here as well.
And I think you did cover it, but again, can you just reiterate the signing of the gas contract and the timescales around that?
Yeah, so we actually signed a framework agreement, which basically said that the National Gas Company was going to buy all the gas on the block. They're going to do it on a depletion contract basis, so not a take or pay. We're not going to have any obligation. Our obligation is going to be any gas that we find, we will sell to National Gas Company. And what we're doing right now is just putting in place the formal agreement, which obviously has pricing in it as well. And so we're in the midst of negotiating price. And the way the pricing works in Trinidad is there's two different basic prices. There's a domestic price, which goes to the local petrochemical business and to generate electricity. And then there's the LNG price, and there's sort of two different streams. And we're just in the midst of figuring out which is the right pricing mechanism that gives us, long-term stability in what we want to do, and yet obviously is a good enough price for the petrochemical business. So we've been going back and forth, but what I can give the assurance to the shareholders and potential shareholders that there's going to be a lot of cash generated out of these wells when you look at the volumes that we're talking about. It's significant, and this is a world-class industry in Trinidad, so they're obviously going to play world-class prices for the feedstock for the petrochemical business.
Okay, I'm going to read this question out in its entirety to make sure I get the terminology correct. The Chinook 1 well is targeting hydrocarbon prospects in the Herrera Formation at depths between 8,000 and 9,200 feet, which is the same geological horizon that was targeted in the Cascader discovery and is yet to be explored with Cascader Deep. But is there any chance of some good zones above the Herrera Formation on Chinook, similar to what happened on Cascader 1?
Short answer is yes. However, even in Cascader 1, the upper zones were still in the Herrera, so it's just different packages within the Herrera. And so, we're going to see the entire Herrera section when we drill this well. There's also up hole. There's also the forest and the various other zones that the cruise formation that come along. But again, I don't want to mislead anybody here. We don't have any information to pass along, and really I think everybody's just going to have to sit tight until we get to the 10,000 feet and get the logs.
It's going to be very difficult for people to. There's a huge amount of anticipation out there. If Chinook
on this end as well, Roland.
I'm sure. If Chinook and Casca Deep is a success, would Touchstone consider ramping up development wells on Cascader and Chinook in order to get more gas on stream faster and increase cash flow before you start spud on Royston?
Probably not. I think what we would actually do is do them both. Actually, we would ramp up the development program at Cascader and Chinook at the same time we drill Royston. There is another rig on the island that's actually best suited for Royston, so we could actually have two rigs drilling in 2021. We could have an exploratory well going at Royston and then development drilling going at Chinook and Cascader. The obvious question that's going to lead to is how do you fund that? And the answer is pretty simple. We've got lots of room on our line of credit, and I don't mind building facilities and drilling some development wells on the line of credit. But exploratory wells, we want to make sure we use the cash on hand.
And on that cash question, what about future dividends?
Yeah, obviously that's something we got to look at. I've been quoted as saying that if things go as planned here, we're going to end up kind of with a wall of cash coming at us. And one of the options definitely there is to look at some sort of a divco down the road. But we've got lots of exploration to drill, and I don't want to jinx it. We're 2 for 2 on the program. Let us get the next few wells drilled here, see if this is a repeatable model, and then we can start to look at some of those things. But for the next little while, all the cash is going to go into the ground for sure.